We haven't seen Steve Millington in nearly a month. He's been putting in, I would imagine, the distance he flew and he sailed and the like is probably in the range of 10, 20,000 miles over the course of the last month. Am I
Quite a
right?
long ways, I'll tell you that for sure.
He went down to the South Pacific, to Australia and New Zealand, to be honest with you, and he told me in the commercial break that he cannot vouch for the toilets flushing in the opposite direction because, well, who bothers to watch?
That's exactly right. There are other things to do. That's not on my list.
It's 8:34. I have a cat that likes to do that.
Watch?
Yeah,
Yeah, well, that's not me.
they stand there, and also when you turn the water on in the bathroom sink, that's also quite fascinating.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
It's 8:34. Steve Millington is the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. It's 27. Bill Colley with you as well on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. The show is top story. And so it's got to be good, though. Actually, it felt good to come back, right?
Yes, it did feel good to come back. There's no place quite like home. It was an interesting trip. It was man, a lot of things to see. You didn't dare close your eyes for 1 minute for fear that you would miss something. So we spent I don't know, 5, 6 days in Australia, and then 9 days on the boat, and 3 days in Fiji. And
Ooh,
yeah,
yeah.
well, Fiji is a third world country. Regardless what the travel magazines tell you, it is a third world country, and it's beautiful. It sits on these uh, coral reefs out there, and it's a pretty good sized island. But you'd like to go for a walk on the beach. Well, the beach is filled up full of coral. The tides coming in picks up the broken pieces of coral and dumps them up on the beach, and that's a little tough on your feet. So you better have some real good water shoes or boat shoes or something that you can walk in, because that stuff just it raises Cain with your feet.
Yeah, I imagine
But
it was a little
it's
painful.
it's flat out there, and you can look around. And
You were
Fiji is a tropical island, so it gets lots of rain, and everything is. They don't have a brown piece of grass anywhere on the island. It's all green. And New Zealand was interesting. The boat would go from port to port to port up the eastern coastline of New Zealand. So we saw Dunedin and Akaroa and Wellington and Gisborne and Tauranga and Auckland. And the boat would travel all night, and then we would make port during the night or early in the morning and disembark and go terrorize the natives all day long. They'd get back on the boat and do it again every night.
you were telling me it's a somewhat of a socialist country in New Zealand.
Yeah, they kind of. I don't think that you would say that they're. Everything's paid for. Our health insurance is paid for, and our education. We'll talk about education. It's paid for, and this is paid for, and that's paid for, and it's interesting to watch how they do things. Um, very well. From my perspective, some of the things they did was very inefficient, and that you just would look at it and say to yourself, "Man, this is stupid. What are these people doing?" But that's the way they did things, and they are very proud of their history and their heritage, almost to a fault. In some places, you would look at it, and they would be explaining the various things. We have this. Oh boy, now I'm ashamed. I can't remember what it is. Oh, some special huge bird in Auckland. No, 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 in Akaroa. Uh, anyway, they have a big sanctuary up there for this thing. And so we went up to look at it. Well, they marched us around up on this hill, and we got into looked like old bunkers, World War II bunkers with glass enclosed viewing areas. And you could look out on the bird nests and watch them setting on their eggs. And the birds are uh, pretty nice. The male and the female take turns sitting on the nest, so that the male shows up and the female goes out and feeds, and she comes back and he goes out and
The
feeds.
least
And
socialist part of New Zealand, the
yeah,
birds. Yeah.
but some of that. But the stuff I didn't see was the stuff I would have liked to have seen. The historical stuff, and some of that was fantastic. Um, I would have liked to gone back inland a little ways and seen the countryside, because we basically visited the ports and the cities and watched everything that they were doing there. There was some area they're really fixated on the Great War, quote the Great War, And by the way, that was World War One. For some reasons, they have distanced themselves from World War II. The Korean conflict never occurred, and nothing has occurred since then. That's it's not even on their in their history books at all. So it's easy to see why some segments of population in the U.S. would like to rewrite history and delete all of that stuff from our history books. Every little community had some kind of memorial to the veterans and soldiers and fallen from the Great War. Now, as a footnote, as an addendum, they would have changed that and added World War II and other. They actually, in one that I saw in Auckland, they had included names of soldiers who had served in uh, current, Gulf War, Afghanistan, Pakistan, so forth. But mostly it is the Great War.
We've got more with Steve Millington coming up. Joining us this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and News Radio 1310.com. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. Joins us on Tuesdays on Top Story with Bill Colley. Steve Millington joining us in studio this Tuesday morning. Hey, just a quick announcement. He's going to actually be back next Tuesday in the usual rotation, and then he's going to fill in for me a few days.
Right.
I'm moving into a larger facility, so I'm going to take a few days and
That'll teach me for taking a little time off. Hang around, can't cover your bases. Otherwise, you're going to get penalized.
Well, I could do this around the job, but I could also try to move everything in over a course quickly of 3 days.
Yeah, well, let's. You got some time coming. Let's burn it up and get everything squared away, and then you'll be back on the job.
Haven't been very good at that in the past, so this time we're going to get it right. We were talking a little bit. You mentioned education. It caught my ear when we were talking in the last segment of the program. Just to point out, if you'd like to reach Steve this morning, too, the number 736-0300. You're listening to Top Story with Bill Colley as well on News Radio 1310 KLIX and News Radio 1310.com. 844 and 25. But I heard you mention education, and that caught my attention.
Well, they have their system down there is a little bit different than what we are used to. The nomenclature is a little different, and I suspect that the outcome, because of their change, is similarly different. They have their primary school, and that's up through the 8th grade. And then they have college, and that's what we would consider to be 9, 10, 11, and 12, high school. They call it college. And then you go to the university. But there is a series of qualifying entrance tests that you must meet in order to be admitted into the, quote, university level teaching. Otherwise, you finish up your college stuff. Excuse me, I got a nice cold when I came back. You finish up your college, quote, which we would consider to be high school, but it includes a higher academic proficiency than our high school. They have lots of beginning college level type classes, like we would consider English 101 at CSI would be taught in, quote, their high school, which is called a college. And all of it's paid for through their taxes, so that when they get finished up at like age 18 and they have finished their, quote, college, unquote, they have accomplished considerably more in an academic environment than our high school students accomplish in the same period of time. And then they move into this university level program where that they can determine a particular academic discipline, and away they go. Now, if you don't qualify for the university level, then you can do technical vocational training at the college school that you go to. And some of the college schools are they don't have, like Twin Falls City or Twin Falls School District has 2 high schools. They have a Twin Falls High School and a Canyon Ridge, I think, is called high school. Filer has a high school, Buell, Kimberly, etc. They're not quite scattered out like that in those areas. They're more consolidated. For example, there wouldn't be a high school in Kimberly or Filer. They would have to come to Twin Falls to go to their, quote, college, unquote. And so they have made things just quite a little bit more disciplined and demanding. But they're heavy leaning on government control. I would refer to it as socialism. Um, this is where the school is. You want your kid to go here to go to school. You don't get he goes here to go to school. You don't have a choice here. Send him right here. And the testing requirements are real demanding. They have to meet these criteria in order to continue this progression up through the line. So the kids over there graduate from quote university unquote with very little, if any, student debt. Government paid it all.
Taxes have to be really high, though.
Taxes are high, and they are camouflaged. When we would pick up, if we went to eat at off track, so to speak, right on your bill would be included the phrase this the fee, the service, that's called the cost. The menu cost on this item includes VAT tax of 20%.
Value added.
Value added tax of 20%. It's buried inside the cost. We don't see it separately. It just says, here's your dinner. That'll be $50. And included in there is a VAT tax of 20%. And I looked at that and I thought, well, so everything is hidden. We don't see the actual tax reach out and hit us right in the face. It's been covered over, camouflaged, but it's there on everything that you touch and do. Duty free was a big deal everywhere we went because the signs would say, this is duty free shop. This is a duty free shop. Well, you could avoid or bypass all of these taxes by showing your passport and saying you're going to take it out of the country. And the airports, oh my good night, they had duty-free shops in there, those places, till you wouldn't know what to do with them all. And that was the reason why. You have cleared security, you have your ticket, you've moved into the waiting area to be called to get on your plane, and they have these duty-free shops. And you could buy your item, and it's duty free because you're leaving. And then before you boarded the aircraft, they would have these long tables lined up there, and you would show them your ticket, and they would give you the items that you had purchased to leave the country duty free, and they would give them to you after you had been given your seat assignment and cleared the gate. Before you got on there, as you went down the jetway to get on the plane, that's where you'd pick up your stuff and get on the plane, so that there's no way you could turn around and get it back out of there because it was duty free. So the taxes in the many ways in that regard, they camouflage it, and so nobody knows it is really there. But it's goofy.
If you had to actually see what the tax was, I think that's where the whole thing would systematically fall apart because people would say, "What?"
If we peeled the covers off of it and got down to here's what's really happening here, you would see an awful lot of people that were really not very happy with the things they have. But the other part of it is that you've got 3 or 4 generations, or maybe more than that, but at least since World War II period, several generations here where this has been totally invisible. And so they don't recognize it. They don't, even if you tried to explain it to them, they wouldn't completely understand what it was you were trying to explain.
You didn't see a lot of, I think, well, there's probably what you'd call productivity. But I think you were telling me before we got on here that you don't see a lot of people in a hurry to get the job done.
Nope. They seemed a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more laid back, a little bit more. We'll get to this in just a minute. And I'll give you one glaring example. We would pull into a facility and we would have to leave by 10 o'clock in the morning. And everybody have to be on the bus, get your suitcases and stuff out. And we'd have a staging area where we would put all of our things. And that was supposed to have been adequate. Well, okay, we piled everything up. I got on the bus. I looked around and I said, I don't see anybody loading suitcases on this bus. So I got back off and walked over there and I said, what do we have to do to get our suitcases on the bus? Oh, you have to tell us. And I said, well, this one and this one are mine. So I picked him up and rolled him up there, and then they picked him up and put him in the bus. And I watched for a minute, and nothing else happened. So I went back and got on the bus, and I said, "Go get your suitcase and bring it up to the bus, and then they'll put it on." Well, they told us to put them over here, and that's what we did. And I said, "I'm telling you, it ain't happening. Get off the bus."
They don't have a lot of self starters.
Not many. Them that was the get up and go, done got up and went. So and a lot of and they're just casual and comfortable, and they don't get too excited. Now, minimum wage in some of the outlying areas is whatever you can get for the day. Minimum wage in Australia, I think they said was like $15. But keep in mind, the Australian dollar is only worth about 75 US cents. So bringing it back to our level, it's about 11 to 12 bucks an hour. Um, but you can't hardly get anything done. I mean, you'd go to a restaurant and it took forever to get things delivered. There was no hurry anywhere to get things accomplished. We went to a couple of diners that we were familiar with them because they have presence here in the States, and it took a long time for them to deliver we could have had 3 meals here in the States in the same amount of time that it took us to get 1 meal over there.
I guess we don't have to worry about anybody there overtaking our economy anytime soon.
I don't think we're not talking about China. However, I will tell you, the one thing that I did notice, and it was prevalent everywhere we went, and that's the number of Asian peoples, South Koreans, Japanese, and a lot of Chinese that were visiting in those areas, because there would be everywhere you went, everything was pretty much identified in 3 specific languages: English, which is the prominent language in both Australia and New Zealand, and then Korean, Japanese, and Chinese, and you could kind of identify which one was which by the characterization, and to help those of us who are not really too internationally, they'd have a little picture of the flag next to each verbiage, but it was amazing to see how many different people. We went to a called the Agrodome, and it's up by Auckland, and it's kind of a showplace of New Zealand agriculture. Well, how many people from the U.S.? Well, we were a pretty large number because we were in a tour group. How many from South Korea? Wow. Huge number of people. And then they asked for Japanese, and there was several hands went up. And then Chinese, and there was many more hands went up. And of course, there was a few New Zealanders and a few other around. But I found it interesting. So many of those people would visit to that area. Then you look at a map. It's not that far to fly from anywhere in South Korea and Japan down to Australia or New Zealand. And it's a nice break. It's a comfortable getaway, and they can just. So yeah, okay, I agree with you. That's not a bad thing to do. But it's interesting. They all travel, and they're interested in pretty much the same kind of things that we are. Let's go look at this. Let's go look at this. Let's go see here. Let's go see there. Blah blah blah. It's just fascinating to watch them.
And I've always found that when I meet the tourists from China and Japan and South Korea, that they generally they speak some English, and they're very curious about all of us too.
They are, and most of them are comfortable enough with English that at least they can say good morning and are you having a nice day, and did you enjoy this thing or that thing, and they can say, yeah, this was fun, this was interesting.
It's 8:56. Steve Millington, chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party, joining us in studio this morning, and of course he'll be back next week for a short period on Tuesday, and then for a longer period Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Right.
But he's just returned from a long trip to New Zealand and a few days as well in Australia. The two countries, very similar in the sense that they were settled by a lot of the same people, but some other differences. They're not, obviously, there's some very distinct things about those two countries.
There is. The Australian continent was primarily the Aborigine countries. Now, Australia was originally established by the English because they needed a, quote, penal colony. What do we do with all of these criminals? We don't have jails enough for them. Well, let's ship them down to Australia.
Surplus Irish.
Yeah, they had this Captain Cook, found or discovered Australia and planted a flag and said, "You now belong to the Queen." So they decided to send him down there and get him out of our hair, ship him off and forget him. And so that's how that one was settled. The Maori people came down from the Pacific Islands and landed on New Zealand, and they still occupy or present about somewhere between 15 and 18% of the total population in New Zealand. So they still have a large presence there that they dominate. They don't dominate. They just try to influence what's going on. But mostly, it is the English people who traveled down there and settled those two areas. They both have parliamentary type governments. Um, uh, they occasionally have had some very quiet, non-violent coups where this uh, process has been destroyed and a new one is established, and that didn't work, so we went back to the old one, and they do that frequently down there as well.
That's a gift of the English-speaking world.
I
Not a lot
thought,
of violence.
yeah, no, they just seem to kind of change with. Now, interesting, they drive on the wrong side of the road. Wow, you talk about goofy. Woo!
More with Steve Millington next week. Coming up in just a few minutes, Dennis Ketterer, former TV meteorologist, joins us with his horror story about the VA hospital system.